The enemy didn't arrive with diplomacy. They appeared like gods, destroyed a planet in seconds, and demanded surrender. But instead of obedience, humanity answered with fire, and an uprising began across the stars. Before we dive in, drop a quick hi in the comments. It may seem small, but trust me, it really helps. YouTube, share this story with more sci-fi fans like us. I'd love to see who's watching. Explosions lit the void. A shockwave slammed against the hull of the UES Eidolon, jolting the bridge crew against their stations. Lights flickered. Alarms screamed. Admiral Wren was already moving before the impact ended, boots slamming onto the grated floor, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Report, tactical systems rebooting," shouted Kyle from the weapons console, rapidly working the controls. "We're being scanned. Deep slice telemetry. External systems compromised." "Where the hell did that come from?" Wren snapped. Commander Lyra spun toward the central display, eyes wide. "Sir, look," the viewport darkened, then sharpened. Something massive had just dropped, out of FTL gravity, buckled across the system. Unshielded drones shattered mid-air. Orbiting satellites melted from sheer radiation pressure. The laws of physics trembled around their arrival, not like visitors, but like gods. No warning, no gravitational distortion, no energy bleed. It hadn't arrived. It had appeared. One ship first, 20 kilometers long, jagged, bloated with curved plates and spires, like a monstrous sea creature torn from mythology. Then another, then 20, then a wave. Each vessel bristled with segmented limbs and moving plates. Their hulls shimmered with a translucent oily film that refracted the starlight into unnatural hues. At the flanks came hundreds of smaller craft, ovoid insectoid, some trailing glowing coils or emitting rhythmic pulses like they were alive. These weren't military escorts. They were servants, workers, a dark swarm trailing behind giants. The bridge lights flicked again as a transmission override hijacked the main holoscreen. No encryption, no transition. A face filled the screen. Not human. The figure stood wrapped in layers of angular red and obsidian armor, every plate etched with pulsating glyphs. Its eyes were vertical slits of cold blue light, embedded in a smooth mask-like face that bore no mouth. Behind it, a tall throne of black metal hovered inches off the ground, held aloft by unseen force. Twin guards stood at either side, identical armor but silver instead of crimson, and twice as tall. It spoke its voice mechanical and ancient, like metal grinding on glass. "I am Zorik of the Zerka Ascendancy. This system now falls under Ascendant domain. Your species has violated its periphery and shall be judged accordingly." The bridge fell dead silent. "We offer one mercy, surrender, kneel, offer your ships, your data, your blood, serve and be permitted to endure, resist, and we will demonstrate." The screen split mid-sentence. One half remained on the Archon unmoving, the other half cut to a live feed. It was Veridon, a lush world, one of Earth's proudest colonies. In orbit, a single Zerka dreadnought loomed dwarfed by nothing, its hull pulsating with immense energy. Then a flash, a thin beam barely visible pierced the planet's atmosphere. Nothing happened. Then shockwaves. Cities erupted in fire. Oceans detonated into superheated steam. Forests burned white-hot from orbit. Structures collapsed as tectonic upheaval tore across the surface. The transmission zoomed in, too close. A family inside a glass biohabitat. 2 children. a mother clutching them. The sky above them glowed, then fractured. The dome shattered. They vanished in a storm of light. Lyra's knees buckled. She gripped her station for support, mouth open in a silent scream. Kale stared. Frozen Ren clenched his fists. The Archon's face returned. "You have 1 hour." Then darkness. No signal, no sound, just the quiet hum of the bridge and the ringing in every ear. "Cut that feed," Ren said, voice barely above a growl. The room didn't move. "Cut it." The screen died. The silence broke. Sir Lyra whispered, throat dry, voice shaking. 12 million gone. KL finished stunned. The comms array buzzed. Panic flared across every open channel. Civilian vessels screamed for instructions. Mining rigs reported sensor glitches. A hospital freighter begged for orders. Ren closed his eyes. One breath. Then he opened them. Steel beneath the storm. Send fleet-wide signal. He barked. "This is Ren. Lock down all civilian systems. Battle groups 1 through 5. Form shield net around the colony ships. Tactical divisions 6 and 7. Prep weapons for orbital fire support." Kyle snapped to action. "Sir, we're outnumbered more than 50 to 1. Those support ships." "They're servitors," Lyra interrupted. "Maintenance, communication nodes. They aren't combat capable, but they're networked, feeding data to the fleet." Ren stepped forward, looming over the central display. "Which makes them a priority target. Kill their eyes first." The door to the bridge hissed open. Thorne stormed in from the UES Hammerfall, voice already raised. "You saw the transmission." "Everyone saw it," Ren answered without looking. "The entire galaxy saw it." Thorne approached. "What's the plan?" Ren didn't respond immediately. He turned to the viewport, staring at the distant shadow of the destroyed colony planet. His jaw clenched. "You already know." Thorne's brow furrowed. "You're going to resist." Ren turned to face him, fully, voice iron. "They didn't ask for negotiations. They didn't offer terms. They issued a decree. And then they killed millions, like it was an afterthought. A beat of silence. They want fear." Ren continued. "They want obedience. If we kneel now, we will never stand again." Thorne said nothing. Ren scanned the room. His crew, pale-faced, trembling but upright, focused, waiting. He hit the general broadcast key. To every ship, every crew, every civilian listening. This is Ren. The Jirka demand our surrender. They offer us slavery or death. A pause. They think humans are soft, scattered, divided, but they don't know who we are. His voice grew sharp. "We are not prey. We are not servants. We are the sons and daughters of Earth, and we will not kneel." Across the fleet, thousands heard the call. On colony ships, frightened families listened in stunned silence. In engineering bays, on drop cruisers, in med bays and command centers, every human in the system felt the shift. The fear turned to fire. The order had been given. They would fight. Elsewhere, light years away, the ripple reached farther. On Earth, President Harland watched the raw footage, lips pressed tight, hands trembling at her sides. In the United Earth Council chamber, silence reigned. The image of Veridan still burned on every screen. General Marcos spoke, voice like gravel. "We go to war." Back aboard the Eidolon, Ren moved to the tactical display. His hands hovered for a moment, then settled. "Load all warheads. bring railguns online, deploy sentry drones in staggered flanking pattern. He looked to Arvila. Her knuckles were white, breath shallow. "You okay?" She nodded stiffly, slinking away tears. "No, sir. But I'm ready." Ren gave her a single nod. Then he looked again at the stars outside, the ones now crawling with death. "Then let's remind them why we survived, when others knelt." Ren's fleet tore out of warp over Veridan like a blade through silence. Guns hot, formation tight, and vengeance burning behind every steel hull. Railguns opened fire. The UES Eidolon led the charge, flanked by the Hammerfall and Spear Point, engines screaming through the black. Missiles launched in synchronized salvos, slicing toward the drifting Zerka formation near Veridan's orbit. The silence of space masked the violence, but the firepower spoke for itself. Kinetic bursts ripping into the enemy's outer flank, vaporizing 2 servitor vessels instantly. Direct hits. Confirmed. Kale shouted over the chaos of the bridge. "We've punched a hole." Ren didn't flinch. "Drive through it. Target anything that moves data or light." The fleet surged forward. The Zerka reacted with mechanical efficiency. The remaining escorts shifted in tight, unnatural formation, their hulls twisting mid-flight. Energy weapons ignited blue plasma beams, stabbing through space with brutal precision. The UES Bastion took the first return volley. Its starboard railgun battery melted clean off hull, buckling inward. Bastions lost forward shields. Arvila called out, secondary compartments flooding with radiation. They're holding but barely. Ren's voice stayed even. "Keep pressure on that breach. Deploy drone cluster." 9 sentry non-tripulated ships poured from the Eidolon, spreading like shrapnel, disrupting enemy targeting systems with a storm of sensor noise. 3 Zerka attack crafts veered off course, colliding with a drifting ore satellite and shattering into spinning wreckage. On board the UES Valor, Lex turned to his helmsman. "Angelius 90 degrees, pitch down. Use the gravity well from the Veridon debris. Sling us under that dreadnought." The ship dropped into a slingshot maneuver, engines flaring white-hot as it curved beneath the monstrous Zerka flagship moments later. Its forward batteries erupted, slamming high-yield charges into the exposed underbelly of a command carrier. The blast carved through the beast's midsection. "Carrier disabled," someone shouted across comms. "She's spinning, dropping behind the formation. Push forward." Lord Ren ordered now. In low orbit, a squadron of drop pods punched into the remains of a Zerka escort vessel. Steel and fire met flesh and bone. Core hit the deck, hard rifle, up before he stopped moving. His squad followed 8 Marines in magnetic boots and exorigs, cutting through the smoky corridor like scalpels. Control rooms 2 levels down. Core snapped. "Move fast. Shoot smart." They advanced through darkness. The walls pulsed alive with veins of biocircuitry that twitched at their presence. A defense robot darted out from a hatch. 3 Marines opened fire in perfect sync. The machine burst like glass under pressure. On the next level, they reached the command node, but it wasn't what they expected. Dozens of beings turned to face them. None were Zerka. They expected resistance. Automated turrets, armed sentries, maybe Zerka infantry behind reinforced bulkheads. Not this, not people. They were thin, malnourished, with shackled limbs and implanted interfaces wrapping their skulls. Blue skin, elongated digits. One collapsed the moment the Marines stepped in. "Hold fire," Core barked, lowering his weapon. These aren't enemy troops. They're... He stopped processing. They're slaves. The others hesitated. A female figure stood up shakily, hands raised. Her eyes were wide, not with anger, but panic. She backed against the wall as one of the Marines took a step forward. I said, "Hold fire," Kor roared. A Zerka enforcer dropped from the ceiling blade, appendages hissing. Kor didn't wait. One clean burst from his rifle, and the creature crumpled, sparks and gore splattering across the floor. Silence followed. One of the slaves collapsed to their knees, weeping. "Say that again," Ren demanded. Lyra's voice was tight. "Lieutenant Kor confirms the ship's crew wasn't Zerka. It was entirely made of enslaved beings, all wearing control implants. Most unarmed one identified herself as Kari Thel from the Irini Republic. Admiral, they haven't had FTL for 70 years. Ren looked at the feed. A real-time image from Kor's helmet showed the ship's interior, where dozens of weak, terrified captives were being helped into evac pods. He said nothing. Sir Lyra's voice softened. "Your orders." His voice came low, cold. "I want every disabled Zerka ship boarded. Check the crews. Don't shoot unless shot at." He turned to the rest of the bridge. "We're not fighting soldiers. We're fighting an empire built on slavery. By hour 4, the battlefield was chaos. Human ships ducked between orbital debris, moving like wolves, fast, precise, brutal. The UES Torrent sacrificed her propulsion system to spin behind 2 flanking destroyers, igniting all forward torpedoes in a dead man's arc. Both targets vaporized. On the UES Stormwatch, Captain Brenner lured 3 enemy interceptors through a narrow gravity funnel, only to collapse it with a synchronized minefield burst. The resulting implosion swallowed all 3 attackers. Human losses were high, but the tactics worked. The Zerka had never faced anything like this. Not from prey species, not from anyone. They began pulling back, not in panic, in calculation. Observation. Inside the Zerka hive mind command relay, Overseer Vithka studied the unfolding patterns. Countless data streams poured into its neural array. Ship movement, weapon, heat signatures, behavioral variances. They fragment hierarchy, the Overseer noted. Unpredictable coordination responded, a secondary mind node. Tactical structure based on intuition, risk tolerance. Irrational error, corrected Vithka. Not irrational, adaptive. Species is resilient. Data suggests high emotional catalyst activation. Defiance. The Overseer pulsed with cold light. First recorded prey species to resist initial compliance phase. Escalate analysis. Restrain assault units. Withhold dreadnought deployment. Deviation must be modeled. The Overseer added. Species now categorized as anomaly. Class threat. Potential recursive influence on subjugated systems. The decision echoed across the fleet. A ripple of retraction. "They're pulling back," Lyra reported, her voice caught between disbelief and confusion. Ren stood with his hands on the rail, watching the battlefield through the viewport. Zerka vessels, dozens of them, were breaking formation, slowly, cautiously, not fleeing, rethinking. "They're studying us," he said. Thorne stepped beside him. "They thought we'd surrender. They've only ever conquered cowards, well," Ren muttered. "They found Earth instead." On the lower decks of the Eidolon, dozens of rescued captives were being treated by med teams. Implanted interfaces were being surgically removed. One medic stared in horror as a diagnostic readout flashed red. They used kill switches, she whispered. If they resist command protocols, the implants spike neural activity until the brain shuts down. In the corner, a small figure shook in silence. A child. Not human. Thin-framed, silver-skinned eyes. Dark as oil, she had no name. Her handler had died when the ship exploded. A nurse wrapped a blanket around her arms, trembling. "We'll get you out of this," she whispered. The child didn't answer. She just watched the humans around her eyes wide, not with fear, but wonder. In the shadows of a drifting asteroid field, a Zerka relay ship intercepted an encrypted transmission, one not from humans. The language was old rough, but unmistakably clear. This is free voice. We are many, we are scattered, but we are not broken. If the humans fight, we will rise. Tell them we are ready, sir, Arvila said, turning from her station voice, tight. We just received a burst transmission. Not Zerka, not ours either. Tracing origin now. Ren looked up. What's it say? Arvila hesitated, then read the translation aloud. They say we are ready, but we need help. Ren stood still for a long moment. Then prepare. Reply channel to who? Arvila asked. The ones who never stopped believing freedom was possible. She nodded, then turned back to her console, hands already moving. Explosions flared over the desert outpost as the stealth pod punched through Cordis, the Three's upper atmosphere, air brakes screaming against the pressure. The hull groaned from the turbulence, but Captain Marius Bren didn't blink. He was already unstrapped, already standing, already briefing his team through comms. Drop zone, ETA 20 seconds. Once we're down, Bravo peels east. Delta pushes straight to the substructure. No comms unless compromised. We don't exist. Inside the troop bay, the strike team checked weapons one last time. Modified Zerka pulse rifles, looted, reversed, and rewired to human command protocols. The exo-rigs shimmered under adaptive camouflage. 5 seconds yelled. Specialist Nira. One hand on the hatch lever. Bren drew his blade. Ghosts in fire. Only if fired upon. We're here to listen. The hatch blew open mid-air. 7 humans dropped into the red dusk, like shadows falling from heaven. On the planet's surface, dust storms howled over ruined harvest towers. Slave workers moved in silence between collapsed irrigation channels, heads lowered, neural collars pulsing with faint blue light. No one looked up. They were trained not to. Except one. A child. Forearms, dust-white skin. She looked skyward and blinked because something was falling without making a sound. 3 clicks away, Team Delta moved fast under the outer walls of Agri-Sub Sector 12. The colony's concrete perimeter had crumbled years ago, but the automated defense turrets still tracked motion. They scanned heat, EM patterns, rhythm of movement. They didn't scan for Zircar code signatures. Delta had those now stolen, spliced, embedded into their boots. Clear, whispered Sergeant Veers. The squad advanced through the breach. Elsewhere, orbiting high above the cloud-wrapped refineries of Kovac 17, Sergeant Dion Vargas snapped a blade into the panel wall of the outer docking bay. Sparks burst. The hatch clicked open. Inside the maintenance corridor, light flickered from exposed plasma conduits. Cloaks on, he muttered. Team Echelon's armor shifted from matte black to an oily shimmer. They vanished into the shadows and moved in formation step by step, floor by floor. Below them, thousands of subjugated engineers, wired fuel relays, and drone refabricators. under the crackling orders of Zirka minders. Specialist Reddick broke comm silence. "We've got contacts, slave labor, neural chain, class 6, but they're reacting." "Scared?" Vargas asked. "No," Reddick replied. "They're looking at us." They reached the edge of the fuel chamber. One of the alien workers stepped forward, broad-shouldered, 6 eyes bonded, plating around his spine. He raised both hands, slowly, cautiously. "You're human?" the creature asked. Reddick raised his rifle but didn't fire. "Who are you?" "I am Cran. My people were taken from the Orland Drift. I used to be a weapons analyst. Now I shovel drone corpses. Do you want to stop shoveling?" Cran hesitated, then nodded once. Vargas keyed his mic command. "We've got a volunteer." Back on Cordasta 3. Captain Bren crouched beside a ruined data spire, fingers working through the shattered relay cables. A glowing glyph blinked once under the surface. He tapped it. Nira's voice echoed in his earpiece. Confirmation on the transmission source. It was broadcast from this location 2 weeks ago. Anonymous origin, masked signal, routed through a Zirka relay station on orbit. Bren's face hardened. "So someone down here asked for help and someone else made sure it couldn't be traced back. Which means we're not just looking for rebels," she said. "We're looking for ghosts." In a buried corridor below Sector 12, 2 humans crept through a collapsed mining shaft. The floor was cracked glass. The walls were bleeding light. They turned a corner and froze. Dozens of alien children, silent shackled, stacked in metal pods. 3 older workers turned, startled. One, a thin, 4-eyed male, grabbed a tool. Another raised, shaking hands. "Who are you?" One demanded. "Friends," answered Corporal Lang, lowering his rifle. "We're here for the ones who asked. They'll kill us all, if they find out," one of the elders hissed. "You'll doom everyone." "No," Lang said. He lifted a small hollow unit and activated the feed. It played in silence. A still image of the Zirka dreadnought Corvanul disintegrating in orbit over VOR-9. Then footage of human troops pulling wounded from slave pens. Then the first message from Free Voice. "You're not alone anymore," Lang said. "You just have to choose on the bridge of the UES." Eidolon Wren stared at a rapidly updating tactical overlay. 7 worlds now flashed red across the star map. 7 infiltration teams deployed. 4 had made contact. Arvila stood beside him. "We've received new transmissions. Not from us. Not Zirka." Small encrypted pulses routed through captured relay nodes. All say the same thing. She handed him a tablet. The message was in 20 different dialects, but the meaning was universal. "We are listening. We are afraid. But we are ready." Wren handed the tablet back. "Then we speak louder." At the edge of the Skavros system on the orbiting refinery platform, Shalek 9 specialist Nura Vera jammed her blade into a data port. Sparks flew. Her eyes darted to the timer counting down on her HUD. 15 seconds. 4 soldiers stood behind her, holding position. The corridor shook as alarms began to blare. 10 seconds. "Almost there," she muttered. 5. The panel clicked. The console screen shifted. Zirka control language blurred into human code. A new protocol uploaded. New target registered. A stealth drone swarm previously locked to passive patrol mode blinked blue. Then red. Then black. "Got it," she whispered. The swarm launched silently across the station, carrying data injectors loaded with rebel transmission codes. By the time Zirka security arrived, the humans were gone. The message had already been uploaded to 37 slave labor clusters. Far from the noise and fire, in a low-orbit prison complex over the scorched world of Moraquel. An interrogation room went silent. The prisoner, a broad-shouldered reptilian creature named Carveth, bared his fangs. "You think I'll betray the Ascendancy, Lieutenant?" Mercer slid a hollow disc onto the table. It played images, Carveth's mate alive, his offspring chained in stasis, faces confused, still breathing. Mercer didn't say a word. Carveth's breathing hitched. "I was told they died." Mercer finally spoke. "No, they were leverage. You still think they care about you?" Carveth looked down, then up. "What do you want me to do?" In the Zirka, the central Dominion retribution came swiftly. Danakar, Thalax, Ilun Beta. 3 sectors locked down. Communications severed, supply lines cut. The entire populations relocated to isolation zones under heavy surveillance. No warnings, no charges, no trials, just silence and fear. Across the slave networks, Zirka voice casts played in loop. Obedience is protection. Obedience is protection. Disobedience is extinction. But fear began to crack, because alongside those warnings came human footage, not propaganda, proof, real-time feeds of rebellion, of Zirka ships being taken down, of families reunited, of high-caste collaborators switching sides. The free voice surged, not as armies, but as whispers, and that was worse. Ren stood before his senior officers. The war room lights dimmed on the central display. Gyros, the last red holdout before the outer rim fractures, a planet wrapped in orbital defense towers, dreadnought fleets patrolling the thermosphere, planetary jammers disabling long-range transmissions. "Liberation isn't symbolic anymore," he said. "It's strategy." He pointed at the projection. "They block us from that world because they know if one planet goes free and the entire galaxy sees it, this war changes." Thorne stepped forward. "We'd have to break 5 orbital lines, crack the jammers, get boots on the ground, and uplink within minutes," Arvila added. "We've mapped the pulse rhythm of their relay systems. We can sneak in if we time our ghost fleet perfectly." Ren looked at them both. No more whispers. He turned to the room. "We show them what freedom looks like." They'd planned for weeks, but nothing in those briefings could prepare them for what Gyros would cost. Cannon fire ripped through Gyros's lower atmosphere as the U.S. Eidolon led the spearhead into the chaos. Clouds boiled. Ion storms surged. Human warships punched through Zirka orbital pickets with synchronized barrages, smashing defense satellites into molten slag. Explosions lit the skies like artificial dawn. Line 3 breached. Commander Arvila reported from the tactical station. "We've opened a window. 90 seconds until the jammers reorient." Ren didn't answer. His eyes tracked the assault path on the main display. 30 dropships already descending, carrying over 1,000 soldiers straight into hell. "Deploy all forward units," he ordered. "Full burn, no retreat." The drop pods screamed across the surface of Gyros, slamming into the shale-hard ground around the sub-city of Avexor, kicking up geysers of ash and bone dust. Jace's boots hit the ground before the hatch fully opened. Smoke rushed in. His visor lit up with target data. Zirka bunkers, Walker patrols, and 3 anti-air turrets still active on the ridge. Viper teams push left flank. "We need those guns down." Blades of plasma fire stitched the terrain. One dropship exploded mid-descent, scattering burning debris across the battlefield. A medic team dove for cover behind a shattered tower before racing to pull survivors from the wreckage. Jace charged forward, rifle barking. A Zerka soldier, all segmented limbs and obsidian armor, lunged at him from the smoke. Jace rolled, came up swinging, and drove his bayonet straight into the beast's chest. It screeched as it fell. The front lines surged. Across the capital plains, human tanks rolled over ancient slave pens. Mech units stomped through trench lines, laying down suppressive fire, while engineer squads placed breach charges on fortified towers. On the western ridge, Nira knelt beneath a downed servitor craft, working rapidly over a cracked console. "We can hijack the signal array," she said, voice taut in comms. "Redirect the entire defense net against their own units." "You've got 30 seconds?" came the reply. Zerka crawlers inbound. She didn't flinch. Sparks flew as the array lit up. Her custom override key blinked green. Done across the battlefield, a Zerka walker suddenly locked onto its own allied formation and opened fire. Confusion rippled through their lines. Human artillery moved in like wolves, scenting blood. Inside the slave compound beneath, a Vexor, silence reigned until the wall blew inward. Debris rained down on a sea of alien faces, crouched, shackled. Some screamed, others just stared as human soldiers poured through the breach. One soldier tore off his helmet, raised a fist. "You're free," he shouted. No one moved. Someone flinched. Another stared at the door like it was a trap. One old female muttered, "Last time we believed that. They burned half the barracks." An old alien male, thin and spotted with bioscars, trembled as he rose. "You lie," he whispered. A medic stepped forward, lowering her weapon. "No, but we don't have much time. Come with us." A younger alien, four-armed face half-burned, hissed. "If we leave, they'll burn our families. We saw what they did on Danakar." A silence, then a cry from the back. "They're dying out there for us." Another voice whispered, "And if we stand, we die too." It came from a child, barely old enough to walk straight. That broke something. Suddenly they stood, not all, not together, but enough. By the third hour, the sky was black with smoke. The Zirkar had regrouped. Twin dreadnoughts moved into low orbit, raining plasma across the battlefield. One human outpost was annihilated, entire squads vaporized. Jace's line wavered. "We're losing the eastern approach. Fall back behind the refinery." "Ruins," he shouted, sniper nests on the smokestacks. "Cut their advance." They did, but at a cost. Private Hassan took a plasma bolt to the chest while shielding a freed captive. "Sergeant." Mendez disappeared under a collapsing tunnel. Jace's own left side was scorched from shoulder to hip. Still they held. And then finally the air went quiet, because the last anti-air tower went dark, and the broadcast system came online. Atop the shattered comm spire in a Vexor specialist, Vera connected the uplink cable and stood back as the tower roared to life. Signal drones shot into orbit. Hacked frequencies pulsed through the clouds. Screens flickered across Zerkar slave networks, and every enslaved species from asteroid fields to jungle moons saw it. Gyros free, Zerkar banners burning, aliens pulling off collars, a scarred, towering male raising a human flag atop the ruins. Dak stood beneath the sky, his massive form framed by firelight. Scars ran across his chest like cracked obsidian. His left horn was half shattered from punishment. He held a Zerkar warglaive in one hand, its shaft broken. He turned as Ren approached. "You're not like them," Dak said. Ren studied him, no. Then what are you? Ren didn't blink. Options. Dax growled low. We've been slaves for generations. My people are taught to fear hope. Fear is useful, Ren said, but it doesn't last. A long pause. My warriors want revenge, Dax said, but many still fear what comes next. They know the Zercar will not forget this. They won't, Ren said. They'll retaliate. Dax looked down at the broken glaive in his hand, then at the ash-covered ground. Then their blood is already on my hands. Then why do this? Ren met his gaze. Because if we don't, no one ever will. Dax looked to the horizon where fires still smoldered. Then he nodded once. Then Gyros stands with Earth. 3 hours later, alarms screamed across the Eidolon. Multiple warp signatures. Lyra's voice snapped through the bridge. Zercar fleet emerging from jump. At least 20 vessels. Dreadnoughts and swarm-class carriers. Ren didn't flinch. Get me orbital positions. Ready firing solutions. Thorn stepped forward. They're throwing everything at us because they can't afford to lose face, Ren said. We hit them where it hurts. He turned toward the main screen. Time to make sure it sticks. Zercar's swarms descended like insects. Fast, violent. Precise plasma rained across the ruins of Avexor fighters. Strafed civilian zones. Missiles punched through support towers. Dozens died in the first salvo. But this time, Gyros fired back. Not just humans, but aliens. Newly armed, newly enraged, in alleyways and trenches they fought with salvaged rifles and sharpened pipes. They overloaded fuel cells, turned servitor bots into bombs. Some died screaming, others died silent. But they fought. Dax led from the front, his voice thundering like war drums. For the first time he roared, "We fight for ourselves." In orbit, the Hammerfall led a flanking maneuver, baiting the Zercar carriers into overlapping fire paths. Mines detonated, railguns tore through cruiser hulls, human pilots sacrificed themselves to take out reactor cores, and still the line held. By hour 5, the Zercar ships began to retreat, scattered, bleeding, uncertain. When the last invader vanished into subspace, the battlefield was quiet. Burned, broken, but quiet. Ren stood in the middle of a makeshift triage center. Around him, medics treated the wounded. Some survivors sobbed, others sat in silence, staring at the horizon. He looked at Lyra, who stood nearby, face streaked with soot. "We stopped them," she said. "For now," he replied. Thorn approached datapad in hand, intercepted transmission from Zercar High Command. They're shifting military assets to several other sectors. Punishment sweeps, crackdowns. Ren's eyes hardened. They'll make others pay. He looked up toward the stars. If they want to make an example, let them. We just made history. The sky over Threx 9999 burned red. Zercar transport ships descended in formation, screeching through the atmosphere like a swarm of blades. The screams from the surface started before the dust had even settled. Slave settlements were surrounded in hours. Families were torn apart at gunpoint. Children were separated from parents and herded into processing camps. Elderly and sick were executed in public as an example. Entire populations were pulled from their homes and forced to march across irradiated plains toward labor zones, barefoot, shackled, starving. Any who hesitated were beaten. Any who resisted were killed. Zirkar, voice casters echoed across every facility. This is the cost of disobedience. This is the price of hope. On board the Eidolon, the footage played in silence. Ren stood at the center of the command deck, arms crossed behind his back. Around him, his officers stared, some furious, others hollow-eyed. Colonel Jace slammed his fist on the table. They're not even pretending anymore. This isn't strategy. This is extermination. They want to break momentum, Lyra said, her voice low. Make every liberated planet wonder if it was worth it. Some of them already are, Thorne added, tossing a data pad down. 2 Outer Rim commanders just recalled their infiltration units. One cited ethical strain. Another said we're accelerating the bloodshed. Ren didn't move. They're wrong, came a voice from the far end of the room. Dax stepped forward, towering and marked by ash, his war-scarred face unreadable. They are not ready to admit that this is war. He looked to Ren. Tell them what happens if we stop. Ren nodded once and turned to the room. If we stop, Gyros burns, and then Earth. He let that hang in the air. No one's coming to save us. We are the fire now. It started with a signal buried deep in the wreckage of a loyalist relay. A short-range pulse was discovered, encrypted in old Zerka battle code, but signed with a phrase no true loyalist would ever use. Chains break from within. It took 2 days to authenticate. Ren didn't sleep for a second of it. 12 hours later, in a decommissioned fuel platform orbiting a dead moon, the meeting took place in total silence. The platform was shielded. No transmitters, no surveillance, just 4 humans, 2 Gyros, sentinels, and 3 figures draped in jagged robes of black and blue. They were Zirka, but not like the others. No armor, no handlers. Their armor was scorched and repurposed, their posture wary, and their faces expressionless but not cruel. The leader of the trio stepped forward. His voice was distorted but calm. My designation is Tarn. I served under Zorik. I watched Gyros burn. I executed the orders myself. But what I saw, after servitors tearing off their collars, refusing commands, fighting without fear, I realized something. The Ascendancy fears more than defeat. Free will. Ren studied him without speaking. We do not ask forgiveness. Tarn continued, but we offer knowledge. Proof. He placed a sealed data core on the table. Military supply routes, communications relays, planetary security shifts, codes, schedules. No one moved. And something else. Tarn added. He extended his wrist. The armor split open and revealed a glowing chip embedded under the flesh. This is a remote decryption seed. It bypasses the fleet-layered encryption around core command protocols. Ren's eyes narrowed. Why? Because the Zerka are not infinite, Tarn said. We are not as many as we want the galaxy to believe. He paused. Most of the Ascendancy's forces are made of servitors, reconditioned species, collared and repurposed. You already know this. We do what you don't know, Tarn said, is how fragile it is. If you cut our command structures, if you free enough of them, this war ends. Ren looked to Arvila. She nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the data core. Telemetry scans. Check out. This isn't bluff. He turned back to Tarn. You know this alliance is fragile. One betrayal and it all burns, we know. Tarn said, and we accept that risk. Over the next 2 days, the war changed. Human engineers tore through the data core and began integrating Zerka stealth protocols into their fleet infrastructure. Fighters were repainted in refractive alloy. Comms officers learned how to mimic Zerka command pulses. Deep code infiltrators rewrote targeting beacons to confuse loyalist drones. Meanwhile, Dax led a resistance cell to a hidden supply base in the outer rings of Gyros. With schematics provided by Tarn's team, they bypassed the energy grid and collapsed the base from within, stealing enough fuel to power 3 long-range jump fleets. The Zerka never saw it coming. But this war wasn't only won with firepower. In the shadows of the Eidolon, a new unit operated silently. Echo Division. Their mission wasn't combat. It was chaos. Lyra oversaw the first tests, sending false transmissions into slave populations under Zerka control. Forged broadcasts, copied from actual ascendancy channels, claimed that several sectors had broken from the central command. Others declared that Earth had destroyed a Zerka dreadnought with a captured alien superweapon. Not all were believed. One transmission team didn't make it back. Another triggered a purge. But 3 systems went dark, and that was enough. But some were, and that was enough. One by one, surveillance logs lit up with reports of missing patrols, unauthorized assemblies, slave revolts, entire planets going dark. The Zerka began to doubt their own data. Meanwhile, the dissidents continued to deliver Artak's second-in-command, Mira, a smaller, more analytical figure, provided the humans with footage of a sealed research facility beneath the molten crust of a gas giant called Naraxis 5. Inside, the footage flickering and unstable, were glimpses of something else. Large chambers, organic conduits, a device the size of a city core suspended in antimatter stasis. Lyra watched the recording 3 times before speaking. "What the hell is that?" Mira only said one word: legacy. They didn't elaborate, and that made it worse. Even the audio cut out for a second, as if the recording itself didn't want to be seen. In the ruins of Threx 99, liberated through precision strikes led by dissident agents and human operatives, Ren walked the edge of a shattered prison camp. Ash swirled around him. The smell of plasma still clung to the walls. Dozens of bodies had been found, killed during the initial crackdown, but others lived. Among them, a small girl, half her face, covered by a now deactivated neural crown. She didn't speak, but she held tightly to the hand of the soldier who found her, one sleeve torn, blood on his collar. Dax approached from behind. "She won't understand today," he said, "but one day she'll remember who gave her back her life." Ren looked at the girl, then to the horizon. "This isn't about victory anymore," he said. "It's about making sure there's something left when it's over." That night in secret, Tarn returned with a final message. "We've opened corridors. We've embedded agents. Our kind do not all think as one. We can move freely on worlds they believe secure." He unrolled a hollow map, 7 planets, all under Jirkar control, all believed impenetrable. Not anymore. With your help, we will liberate them quietly from within. Ren's hand hovered over the map. The tide wasn't turning. It was already shifting beneath their feet. A burst of plasma fire tore through the barricade as the second wave of rebels charged across the plaza. In Narjek, capital city of Vekra 4, smoke curled through shattered archways while carved Jirkar sigils crumbled underfoot. Screams filled the air, some of rage, some of triumph, many of pain. Burakan, a broad-shouldered Miran miner once collared and chained in the fusion pits, swung a salvaged shock maul into the chest plate of a Jirkar sentry, shattering bone beneath alloy. He didn't stop. He couldn't. because if he did, he might remember the sound his chains used to make. Behind him, his people had broken free, and now they followed him into war. Across the city, entire blocks were ablaze. Zhirka command banners were ripped down, trampled, burned. Civilian holding pens cracked open one after another, and where once silence reigned, now chants rose, raw, chaotic, defiant. And above them, projected onto the night sky by a stolen orbital reflector, one message, pulsed in dozens of languages. The ascendancy is falling. Inside the shattered command dome of Vecra. 4 Nira knelt over a burned-out comm terminal, bypassing lockouts with tools not meant for precision, but for brute force. Sweat ran down her face as sparks licked across her gloves. Come on, she muttered. With a shudder and a groan, the system booted, barely functional. The screen blinked alive, showing a relay map of surrounding slave worlds still under Jirkar control. "Got it?" she said. Arvila's voice came through her earpiece. "Feed is active. Begin transmission." Nira slammed the final connection into place. Across the city, then the planet, then systems beyond the image changed. Not a flag, not a speech, a single shot, a Jirkar. General kneeling in surrender, weapon dropped, surrounded by former slaves who now aimed weapons of their own in the subterranean chambers of Jayla 6. A rebellion erupted without warning. Human operatives had provided smuggled power cells, stripped down rifle schematics, and basic battlefield doctrine weeks prior. But until that night, the local species, the Serathi, refused to act. That changed when the eldest among them, blind from years of service, walked into the central plaza and tore the control collar from his own neck with sharpened bone. They followed him. Guards were overwhelmed with blunt tools and explosive charges hidden inside cleaning units. Barracks were set on fire. The orbital beacon was smashed, and for the first time in a century, the night sky above Jayla 6 was silent. It was the first word they'd spoken aloud in years, and they meant it. Not all fires caught. On Tarnis Beta, a revolt collapsed in a matter of hours. Jirkar commanders executed hundreds publicly, then implemented forced bonding procedures. Children were reassigned. Elders were taken for neural reconditioning. One resistance cell was buried alive in the tunnels they tried to use as escape routes. Their last message wasn't a scream. It was a whisper. Don't stop. Footage of the aftermath was leaked deliberately to warn others, to remind them that failure meant annihilation. On board the UES Eidolon, Ren watched it play out in silence. Behind him, the war table was littered with open files. Some marked victory, others purged. Thorn entered face tight. 5 more cells, active, 3 in standby, 1 requesting weapons, 1 requesting extraction. And the last, Ren asked. They just asked for music, Thorn said quietly. Something from Earth. Ren didn't speak. Then calmly send them something loud. In the steel caverns of Karivin, 2 factions of liberated species clashed violently. One group, mostly survivors of mining camps, wanted to dismantle everything. Zerka, total destruction, vengeance. A galaxy scorched clean. The other group, younger, idealistic, pushed for rebuilding, for alliances, for integration. When their fists gave way to blades, human peacekeepers stepped in. Not as rulers, not as commanders, but as barriers. They took hits, not sides, and one by one, the shouting dimmed. Lyra addressed both groups personally. "We didn't free you to own you," she said. "We gave you the match. What you burn is your choice. But if you burn each other, they win." That night, both groups stood vigil together over the names of their dead. It wasn't peace, but it was a start. Across dozens of liberated zones, humans continued to act not as conquerors, but as enablers. They delivered medkits before weapons training, before orders. Knowledge, not doctrines. They refused to raise flags on foreign ground. They refused to name planets. They offered only one thing: tools. And a question: what will you do with your freedom? From the shadows, Zirka dissidents, like Tarn and Mira, moved through old networks, sabotaging command lines, corrupting encryption protocols, exposing supply routes. They no longer acted cautiously. They acted decisively. In one operation, they lured a loyalist fleet into a trap by broadcasting a distress signal encoded in ancient Zirka war hymn tones. The loyalists arrived expecting reinforcements. They met 22 Allied ships armed with repurposed ascendancy weaponry. None escaped. In the wreckage, human engineers pulled data from the wrecked command ship, encrypted systems, heavily shielded files. One folder stood out: O-Arc Shard, Deep Vault. Inside, fragmented schematics, deep core reactors, gravitational inversion codes, and one chilling phrase: fail-safe for total collapse. They didn't yet know what it meant, but they knew it wasn't meant to be used. Not unless the Zirka were truly losing. Inside the high command halls of the Ascendancy, panic brewed beneath layers of control. Minor officers defected, entire units had stopped responding. Sector overseers sent incomplete reports, some clearly falsified. Zaleth met with the remaining Archons in a sealed chamber of obsidian and light. "We are bleeding," he said. "Our control fractures. Our enemies multiply." One Archon clicked in disdain. "We still hold the core worlds. We still command the weapon." Zaleth's gaze darkened. "We do. But if we use it, we erase everything." The silence said more than any protest could. Then the third Archon spoke, voice low and mechanical. "Perhaps that is preferable to humiliation." Silence followed. Not in agreement, in recognition. The galaxy was no longer watching in fear. It was watching in anticipation. In the carved valleys of Jirhatal, former slaves trained with rifles beside human sergeants. In the spires of Velus Prime, relay towers flashed with intercepted propaganda, now overwritten with messages of resistance and raw footage of liberation. Whole systems buzzed with uncoordinated chaos. Not war, not yet, but something worse for the Ascendancy: momentum. And on the edge of it all, 7 planets once thought untouchable began to shift. Their guards stopped reporting. Their skies flickered with strange new lights. Their walls whispered with names once forbidden. Freedom was no longer a rumor. It was an infection, and it had no cure. Across the galaxy, the cracks spread. The Ascendancy's voice no longer silenced resistance. It fed it. Every whisper of hope bred another act of defiance. Every liberated world became a message. They can bleed. And somewhere deep within the shattered core of the Empire, the Jirka stopped asking how to win. They asked only, how do we make them stop? The answer came not in words, but in fire. The skies over Kael Jur turned black. From orbit, the planet glowed like an ember. Rings of fire traced the contours of its continent-sized defense grids. In the void beyond the Jirka, unleashed their final doctrine. A sun in the Nexar system went dark, collapsed inward. its core destabilized by a singularity bomb. The star's death ripple tore through nearby planets, vaporizing 2 resistance outposts and shredding the atmosphere of a third. No warning, no negotiation, just silence. On the bridge of the Eidolon, Ren watched the transmission in stunned silence. The image burned into every screen, a system unmade in less than 2 minutes. And in those 2 minutes they lost 3,000 lives, without a word, without a war. Lyra, standing pale beside him, whispered, "They've stopped trying to win." Ren didn't blink. "They're trying to erase the board." Hours later, fleets moved. Human dreadnoughts, Ralthar cruisers, Gyrosi rams, and Mirren firewings formed a formation never before seen in the galaxy's history. 100 species once scattered and broken, now charged as one toward the heart of the Zerka Empire. Kyljur, the capital, the cradle, the source, and the target. On the surface of Kyljur, the resistance met walls of flame. Massive defense obelisks pulsed with energy. Their plasma arcs tearing Allied ships from the sky before they could land. Zerka infantry fought with brutal precision, unified, cold, relentless. Smoke didn't rise. It pulsed like the planet itself was exhaling death. For every 10 meters gained, 100 lives were lost. Colonel Malon's assault wing breached the northern quadrant of the outer city, losing half its tanks in the first 5 minutes. Flame-streaked ruins collapsed around them as air support was shredded overhead. Still they advanced. Inside one burning control bunker, Malon yelled into the comm. "They're not holding the city. They're funneling us into kill zones." Dax's voice came through harsh and furious. "Then break the damn funnel." Far beneath the burning capital, inside a hollowed-out tectonic vault, something awoke. Sensors on the Eidolon screamed. Lyra's eyes went wide. Massive energy spike. Central core, 7 kilometers beneath the capital. It's off every scale. This isn't orbital. It's stellar. Technician. Riva flinched as the main screen displayed the raw readings. "Sir, this isn't a weapon. It's a goddamn reset button. They're going to collapse the galactic plane." Ren stared at the growing energy vortex displayed in ghostly blue rings. "They know it's over," Lyra said. "They'd rather burn everything than fall." Ren turned sharply. "Then we get to it first." In the foothills beyond Kyljur's southern range, a new battle was already raging. One of ideology. Inside a makeshift command shelter, voices rose in argument. Gyrosi warriors, still bleeding from the front, demanded the complete extermination of the Jirkar race. "They gave us no mercy. Why should we offer any in return?" A Ralthar chieftain slammed his fist onto the tactical display. "We burn their homeworld. We make it history." Dax stood silent until Ren entered. The room quieted. "We win," one of the Mirren. Captains snarled and leave their hatchlings alive to crawl back in 1,000 cycles. Ren stepped forward. "If we become them, we win nothing." One Mirren veteran held up his mangled hand. "They took everything from me, and I'm still supposed to be better than them." Ren didn't look away. "Yes," he looked to each of them. "We're not here to erase. We're here to end the rule of fear." "One," Gyrosi scoffed. "And what stops them from rising again?" Ren's voice dropped. "They won't get the chance, because we're going to end the last breath of their empire from the inside. We destroy that weapon, and we bury the idea that they were untouchable. And Dax's voice followed, low, firm. And if we slaughter every last one, then we're just building a new empire in their ashes. The room held. Then slowly, warriors lowered their weapons, reluctant but resolved. The ground offensive pushed through outer Kyle-Jur like a blade through bone. Human artillery teams advanced with mobile shielding covering retreating civilians as more of the slave species rose up from underground bunkers, dragging stolen rifles and armor. One of the Zir-Ka dissidents. Mira moved quietly through the crumbling districts, disabling beacon spires with a sequence known only to core-level operatives. For a moment, even the loyalist Zir-Ka were disoriented, unsure if the command network had collapsed or betrayed them. Some surrendered, some self-terminated. Others fought harder, knowing nothing remained. At the heart of the capital, a monstrous breach opened a spiraling crater where the weapon's energy core pulsed. From its depths rose a massive construct fused with the planet's own crust, a lattice of ancient black alloy feeding on gravitational shears pulling mass and data from the planet itself. Inside the weapon, 6 chambered cores spun around a central pillar, growing hotter with each rotation. Light bled from cracks in space. The air hummed with energy so dense it warped the sensors watching it. Ren watched the data feed with his command team. His voice cut the tension like a blade. If they're going to die, they're going to take the galaxy with them. He turned to Jace, to Dax, to the newly formed combined strike team. Not if we get there first, inside the command bunker. Lyra linked visuals from ground scouts. The weapon's shield was still active but flickering. "We've got a window," she said. "Small, but it's real." Thorn stepped forward. "We breach plant the failsafes and pull out. If we don't disarm that thing before full ignition, we don't come back." Ren finished. No one argued. At the surface edge of the crater, the strike team assembled. Humans, Gyrosi Mirren, Zir-Ka. Dissidents, enemies days ago, now brothers in fire. The plan was suicidal. They all knew it. Still, Ren stepped forward. Plasma charge strapped to his backside arm in hand. He looked at the jagged glow at the base of the crater and whispered to no one in particular, "This is their last breath." He raised his weapon. "Let's cut it off." No one spoke. No one prayed. They'd already said goodbye the moment they volunteered. A moment later, the ground shook and the final assault began. Steel shattered under the force of the explosion. The blast flung bodies in every direction. Zir-Ka sentries and Gyrosi, shock troops alike. Flames rolled through the corridor, searing banners, melting alloy, scorching lungs. Colonel Jace crashed into a wall, coughing blood, barely able to lift his weapon. Behind him, the final assault unit poured through the breach. Weapon-raised voices hoarse from screaming over fire and chaos. "Push forward, do not stop," the last gate to the throne core, the central fortress of Kyle. Jure had fallen, but what lay beyond wasn't surrender. It was defiance. It was annihilation. A wall of Zir-Ka warriors awaited them, fully armored, fanatical. The last loyalists of a dying empire. They didn't speak. They didn't retreat. They fought like extinction was preferable to defeat. Bayonets clashed against talons. Plasma burned skin and scale. A Mirren lieutenant impaled 2 Zir-Ka before being torn apart by a 3rd human rifleman, fought side by side with Serathi lancers, blood painting the walls of a city that had ruled 1,000 worlds. Jace slammed a power cell into his rifle, ducked behind a broken column, and fired 3 quick shots into the chest plate of a charging Zir-Ka officer. It went down hard, shrieking, but another took its place instantly. "Where's the strike team?" He barked into his comm. No response. Static. Deep below the carnage, Ren ran. He didn't walk. He didn't command. He ran across collapsing platforms and flaming halls, leading a unit of 5 through the heart of the machine, buried beneath the city. The obsidian vault. The path had narrowed. The air thinned. Light pulsed erratically from the walls as the weapon beneath the city. The last gasp of the Empire approached full activation. Lyra's voice crackled through his ear, energy levels spiking. We're minutes away. Ren didn't respond. He vaulted a twisted support beam and kept going, boots slamming, metal teeth clenched. Behind him, Dax stumbled, blood leaking from a jagged wound along his ribs. Mira, the Zherka dissident, moved beside him carrying the override code, a sequence embedded in his own body. They reached the inner sanctum and stopped. The chamber wasn't a room. It was a wound. Massive stone pillars arced into the void. Between them floated the core, a black orb of cracked matter pulsing with gravitational distortions. Around it, circuits wove into living cables, pumping energy and agony alike. The power of a sun channeled into a death engine. A single figure stood at the center, hands outstretched, armor fused to the activation panel. Archon Izertal, the last voice of the old order. His eyes met Ren's. "You were warned," he said. "We told you. Without us, there is only chaos." Ren lowered his rifle a fraction. "Then we'll see what chaos builds." Izertal didn't flinch. He twisted his fingers and the machine screamed. The outer rings of Kael Jor lit up like a star being born. Great towers split open, firing columns of violet flame into the upper atmosphere. The ground cracked. Entire districts sank into the earth. On the Eidolon, Lyra worked the console swiftly, eyes locked on the cascading data, energy flux, accelerating 30 seconds. She turned to Thorn. "We lose everything. If that core fires," Thorn's voice was grim, "including every system in reach. They'll shatter starlings, collapse planetary fields." She looked back to the screen. "Where the hell is Ren?" Back in the chamber. Chaos exploded. Izertal unleashed a shockwave of force, flinging the squad into the air. One soldier's body hit a support column and snapped. Another was crushed beneath falling debris. Dax roared, launched himself forward, and was impaled through the chest. He dropped, coughing blood. Ren screamed and opened fire. Round after round tore through the Archon's armor, but the being refused to fall, refused to yield. Until finally, Mira stepped forward. No weapon, no threat, only words. "You die, screaming into a void of your own making," he said, and with one hand he touched the console, pulsing with the override code burned into his skin. The machine froze. Lights died. The orb cracked and the weapon fell silent. Izertal collapsed dead. The battle above raged for hours more, but without the core, Kael Jor began to collapse. Not in fire, but in surrender. One by one, Zherka commanders laid down their arms, their last rally point destroyed, their final weapon disarmed. The war was over. On the field outside the ruins, Ren stood over the body of Dax. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The warriors of Gyros stood behind him in silence. The Mirren formed ranks and saluted. Even Mira, bloodied, burnt, trembling, knelt beside the fallen war chief and bowed his head. They buried him in the soil of Kael Jor, beneath the flag of his choosing. Not human, not Jurkar, only a black banner, unmarked, unclaimed. Days later, The galaxy echoed with silence. The stars pulsed quietly again as if afraid to break the moment. In a war room atop the crippled Eidolon, Ren stared at a blank map once covered in red and blue, now scattered with gray. Uncharted space, leaderless sectors, rogue militias, new factions, no empire, no peace. Thorn leaned on the edge of the table. "They're asking for guidance," he said. "Every liberated system wants a voice, a direction." Ren didn't answer. "You've become the Axis," Nathan Arvila said softly. "They're looking to you." Ren's hand closed slowly into a fist. "And what do we give them?" he asked. "A new chain, a new throne." Silence. Then he stepped away from the table, eyes fixed on the stars beyond the viewport. "We broke the chains," he said. His voice was low, heavy, "but let's hope we never have to forge them again." The stars remained distant, unforgiving, and utterly, completely silent. "Hey there, space human. I'm really curious about your thoughts on this video. Drop a quick comment and let me know what's on your mind, or just say hi if you prefer. Either way, I'd love to hear from you. Oh, and one last thing. Every great soldier knows that to survive and become a hero, taking care of yourself is key. So before you go, check the pinned comment. Trust me, it's important, and I've chosen another video for you to watch. Just click the card here or here if you want the whole playlist. See you there.